Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to today's conversation about the future of independent venues and emerging artists. I'm Lawrence Purrier, co-founder of The Tone Arm and host of Spotlight On. We're here because the live music ecosystem we all love needs our attention. Touring costs have reached levels that make it financially impossible for many emerging artists to get on the road. Meanwhile, independent venues, the very spaces where you discover your next favorite artist, operate on margins so thin that many are a few risky booking bets away from closing. But today is not about problems without solutions. Our three guests have created something remarkable, a collaborative model that addresses these challenges head on. The One Night Live Tour, which launched on May 16th, represents a new approach. Three organizations pooling resources, multiple artists supporting each other on stage, and 14 venues getting the financial support that they need to take chances on new talent. Joining us today are Kat Henry, Executive Director of Live Music Society, which has distributed millions in grants to 180 venues since 2020. Liza Levy, President of Lick Incubator, which helps independent artists build sustainable careers. And Tom DeGeorge, COO of Detour, a network connecting venues and artists across multiple markets. We also have some special guests, the artists from the tour itself. They're en route to the next tour stop, so they're joining us from a cramped vehicle there somewhere on our nation's highways. But we have Farayi Malek, Sofia Lafuente, Ellie Williams, who is driving and will keep both hands on the wheel at all times, and Wes Chalfant. For the next hour or so, we'll explore how these organizations are changing the economics of touring and venue programming, and how the one night live model might point toward a more sustainable future for independent music. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat here or on YouTube, and we'll get to them as we go. Now, I'm so happy to welcome Kat Henry, Liza Levy, Tom DeGeorge, and our friends, the artists themselves. Welcome to the live stream.
Nice to be here, LP.
Yeah, it's great to see you all these happy, smiling faces, doing so much to keep the music going. Kat, I'd like to start with you if I can. I'd like to get a little bit of the venue perspective, specifically when venues apply for Live Music Society grants. What are the types of challenges you're hearing about from venues, specifically when it comes to booking emerging artists?
That's a great question to kick off with. We have two grant programs. One is Music in Action, which is our audience building, community engagement grant. The other one is more practical. It's called the Toolbox Grant. It's for things that, as we say, improve the experience for audiences, your staff, and the artists who come to your venue. And that can be super practical things like building a bathroom. And in many cases, it is exactly that. The Music in Action grant, and we're about to announce 26 more venues next month that will be recipients of this grant, is really focused on, it was designed to help people come back. We launched it in 2023, and we had surveyed people. We'd been talking to people throughout our emergency funding about what's going on? Are you reopened? Are people coming back? And we kept hearing, nope. No, it's crickets, and understandably so. So this grant was like, okay, is there something that you can do? Is there something that we can help you with that will bring people to your room or create visibility or use your space in a innovative way? And over the 3 years, we've just finished our third round, 23, 24, now 25. A lot of what we hear is that we love emerging artists. We'd love to be able to take a risk on them. We'd love to give somebody their first headline show. We've got this programming idea that we really think will touch the refugee community who are moving to our area. We can't do it. We can't take that risk. We run the risk of closing if we do. And a lot of it's about programming and giving chances to local people and touring musicians. And so that theme has kind of cropped up. There's other projects that they do as well, community festivals, disability access to their venues, ramp building, really simple stuff. But this comes up time and time again. And and just to be able to, respond to that need outside of our grant program was what was behind this.
Mm. I'm curious, before I move on to the other panelists on the business side, I wonder what it looks like from an artist's point of view when you're trying to book something or get booked or play your local or regional venue. What's the feedback you get that's preventing you from getting gigs? And I'll throw it to any of our any of our artist guests.
I think
Oh, I,
Liza, you want to take that? Oh,
oh,
excellent. Yeah.
I think that the biggest question as an artist that we get is, can you fill the place? Can you sell tickets? Can you get people in seats? And as an emerging artist, that's really difficult because people need to know who you are to want to come see you. And so getting that visibility is really important. And so the venues are really important part of helping that happen for us.
Yeah. I'm curious, Liza, from the artist development side, I think it's always been difficult, right, to build a career. But I'm curious, how have the last few years and the various issues, whether there's the pandemic or the related inflation, et cetera, what's made it particularly difficult of late for emerging artists to build this touring experience?
Well, it's just incredibly expensive to tour in a sustainable way. Maybe you get a coveted opening slot on a larger tour, but maybe the guarantee is $500 a night, and that's not covering your transportation, your lodging, paying for your band members, paying to create merchandise in advance of the show to hopefully sell. And so there's all of these barriers to getting out on the road as an emerging artist that I think as expensive has as things have gotten more expensive, it just becomes harder and harder.
Tom, on your side, how do you think about the financial risks of booking artists without proven draw? I mean, I know you are a venue owner, you talk to so many venues and promoters. What's the conversation on that side of the table?
Well, I mean, just like everybody else has said, things are more expensive, but you also have less rooms. You've got for these artists, there's less reputable spaces because rooms are closing. And so if they have to travel longer distances to get from show to show, it's hard to have a sustainable tour. And then, the venue itself, if it agrees to do a show with a lesser known artist, you have to absorb more risk. I'm lucky because I've been doing this for a really, really long time. And over the years, I've been more willing to take chances. But if I was just getting started, if I was a young venue right now, and I was in year 2 or 3 or even 5 of my existence, I would be very wary to take a chance unless it's something that's a sure thing. So I think, when you look at the ecosystem and what we've talked about and everything that's happened over the last few years, you have to start thinking a little bit bigger, thinking outside of the box, and maybe dreaming a little bit about what can we do to change the narrative that we're seeing thus far, and how do you accomplish that? And I think one of the ways to do it is by leveraging these relationships, whether it's artist to venue or artist to venue to other organization that is like-minded in what we're trying to do, and then multiple organizations. So, there's that old saying that it takes a village. Well, it really does right now, because, the ecosystem, the way it used to be, was more of a pyramid where everything was big on the bottom and it peaked at the top. And right now, because it's been cannibalized so badly, it's upside down. And so it's up to all of us to reverse that trend and get back to these developing artists having a fair shake and getting noticed in these rooms that help build community. because that's really where it should happen. You can have technology and everything else, but until those artists can perfect their craft on a real stage, it's going to be very short-sighted.
Yeah. Before I get back to, I have a follow-up question for Kat. I did want to ask our artists who are participating here. One of my sort of pet gripes is that we ask artists to be so many things these days. They have to not only create music, but they have to be social media marketing managers, and they have to be finance experts and small business people. And to an extent, some of that's a good thing, right? To understand your business and to understand your career. But ultimately, we want our artists making art. And every minute that they're spending doing something else, they're not making art. And so I'm curious. And again, I'll throw it to anybody who's in a position to answer from the car. How aware are and were you of the realities that your counterparts on the business side were facing, right? Like, you're out, you're pitching venues, you're making music, you're trying to get gigs. And I would imagine sometimes it just feels like roadblocks or no's. But how much awareness and insight did you have into the struggles that the people on the other side of the table were having?
I mean, I think that the industry has also changed a lot in general. Like everything that you've talked about when it comes to COVID can also be applied to everything else on the business side as well. So previously, a project like ours, we might already be at a stage in a scenario where we're signed to a label, we're getting placed as opening acts on their tours. Nowadays, labels take less risks too. So nobody wants to take risks, which we understand. But we kind of are the ones that have to be left with, okay, we are solely taking the risk on ourselves for a much longer time than it would have been pre-COVID, I think, if that's fair. But yeah, I mean, it has pros and cons. You do run it like a business, and that does mean that if there is a chance to, hop on a tour eventually, or sign a deal with a major label, you're going to be in a much better place to understand your own business and the best way to go about that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Kat, related to that, how much support does a venue typically need to take a chance on an unknown artist? Like, what are they evaluating? How do they get to yes?
Well, bodies in the room, of course, like every venue owner would love sellout shows and everybody buying food and beverage and, successful shows. And that does happen, of course. And in some ways, those shows of like super popular artists and engaged fans can sometimes subsidize the others. There's a larger conversation about larger venues subsidizing the emerging artists who play in the small venues. That's something that's being explored in the UK more, about like stadium shows, like a pound a ticket going to this fund that supports. But in lieu of that, that's where we come in. It's not one number. It's not like $500. It's like, okay, there's so many variables for a venue size, right? The smallest venue on this tour is 80 cap, largest is 300. There's tertiary market versus primary market. The big cities, or it may have a built-in audience. I think a lot of venues are looking at, can I cover the sound guy? Can I cover the security? Can I cover the bartenders? Am I going to sell anything? Is anybody going to be in the room? And, it's like, understandably, artists are making money on tour through merch, but that's just, when people have less disposable income, which of course we all know that they do now after inflation and the changes of the past few years and coming out of COVID, you have to be very selective about how you spend your money. And we have to understand that on the consumer side as well. Yeah. So, it means different things for different people. We have for-profit venues in our network. We have non-profit network venues. Sometimes they approach things, they have membership programs, built-in concert series, those kinds of things. But otherwise, it's a small venue going, I'm just going to take a chance. Hopefully I can cover the sound guy and the security, like the very basic stuff, not even the fixed costs, just the direct costs for that night. the person on the door, for example. So yes, and there's no one answer, but what we've tried to do is to look at all those variables and like provide something that maybe is just encouraging. Okay, if we give you this small stipend, you know that you can take a little bit more of risk than you might otherwise be able to do. And we're not talking about lots, $300, right? That you could use on marketing, publicity. And speaking of, that's another expense for artists. When you talk about the cost of touring, there's the cost of publicity and marketing as well, isn't there? So that this model is, and believe me, this is we're beta testing this. This is the first thing that we're trying to do that tries to address some of the issues from the artist side, from the venue side, and the industry side as a whole, connecting venues with each other to go, okay, how does this work? How do we stop venues closing? How do we help emerging artists get to the stage in their careers where they are playing 1,000, 2,000 seat venues? How do they get there without this network and community? So we're learning as we go. So like I said, there's no one answer, but we're gathering data and information. We have a survey out to every venue. Did it work? What would you change? What would you like to tell us about, how it could work? This is the first of what I hope and plan to be many, many tours going back to the same venues. We have hundreds of small venues in our network, many grantee, 144 grants out there so far. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong number. 180 with 26 more to come. So as we build this group, we're engaging with them and finding out what works as we go.
Yeah. Before I move on from you, Kat, let me just ask you. I touched on it obviously in my introduction, but would you articulate for the audience what is the One Night Live tour and how is it different from a typical tour?
Okay. Well, I met Liza a couple of years ago at Americana Fest in Nashville. And as soon as I met her, I was like, okay, we need to do something together. I loved what Lick Incubator does. Lick is one of the artist incubators. There are several across the country. I'm deep into trying to find out where they are. Cleveland Rocks, Midtopia, Key Change. There's a lot of organizations who have recognized how hard it is and want to help and are doing real work to help these artists. That's not my role. Live Music Society supports the venues. We, honestly, being candid, we never want to get into the situation where we're programming, right? We don't want to be picking certain artists, but by working with artist incubators, we have a way to add to what they're already doing. So that was the genesis. We spent a year, batting around different versions of this. And last summer, I was like, we're going to have to do something sometime. And that's when I got talking to Tom and Sean and the folks from Detour. I was like, these are the venues. Many of them are our grantees. They're folks we know from the National Independent Venue Association. They're folks we know to be really engaged. They care deeply. So it just made sense at that point last summer for us to say, hey, you want to try something with us? You want to do this? And, eventually we settled on a model. The artists are selected by Lick, and I'll let Liza unpack that a little bit. Detour brings that expertise, that knowledge of routing, touring. You don't want to drive more than 6, even though this is, I think, the longest drive on the tour. You don't want to be driving longer than 6 hours, right? So we kind of looked at all of the different pieces, and this is the first model that we're trying. This is a commercial tour. The artists are getting a door deal. If they have merch, they're selling merch. The venues are doing their best and selling tickets as they normally do. We're just providing a little bit of a stopgap. And we've said to them, listen, this is a stipend. It's $300 for this one night live. You can use it for marketing. You can use it to support the other band on the roster. You can use it to cover your expenses so that you know that you're going to be cool for the night. You decide how you're going to use it. And that's how we built these 14 gigs, beginning in Miami and going like, as a big question mark, going up around the country and coming all the way back around to Nashville. And yeah, we're learning as we go. We're learning, does this work? How should we change it? What do we all need to bring to the table? What support do the artists need? So, and then just the reason, the raison d'etre behind this whole thing is that, you know, we have gotten to know these amazing venues. Not all of them become grantees. There's a juried grant process, right? And as much as we want to keep our grant programs, there's a lot of really incredible venues who don't even know who we are yet, or haven't applied for a grant, or applied and have not yet become a grantee. We wanted to make sure that we were engaging and supporting those venues and just spreading the love a little bit. And this was the ideal way to do that.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Liza, tell me a little bit, and maybe we could bring the artists into this part of the conversation as well. How did you identify the artists as the right ones for this experiment? And I'm curious, both from your perspective and theirs, what were the conversations around this idea and this model and everybody's sort of, how'd you get everybody recruited and on board?
Yeah, totally. So we were looking for, number one, incredible songwriters and storytellers. The songs have to be there in order for audiences to connect. They had to be really strong live performers, had to be able to bring it on stage. Fire in the belly. They had to want it, because this is, even though they have support from us and they have support from Live Music Society and Detour, it's still not easy being out there on the road. Like, you have to make, I mean, case in point, this is their couple hours off where they're in the van and they're doing podcasts and they're doing press and they're making content and they're reaching out to local artists to connect before they get to town. So they've got to want it, right? They've got to want to be full-time artists. The other really important aspect was that they had to be wonderful instrumentalists, so that they can back each other up musically. Because one of the things that keeps this tour sustainable for them is that they, when they're not doing their own set, they're backing the other artists up, either playing their instrument, singing background vocals for each other, so that none of them had to hire a band, because that would have made it way too expensive to go out on the road. So essentially, they are each other's bands. So that was a really important aspect of it. And then they got to be a great hang, right? Like, they are just living together every moment for the next 3 weeks. So if they weren't going to get along, if they weren't cool to hang out with, if they weren't going to be cool, these amazing independent venue operators and local musicians, it wasn't going to work. So the hang is super important. And then, you know, just there had to be a through line musically between the three artists so that their audiences could successfully cross-pollinate and discover each other through this model. So yeah, I think that through line is absolutely the storytelling and the relatability of what they're bringing into the world.
Yeah, I'm super curious from the artist's perspective. You know, this is obviously a really cool, different idea, but especially the part about being each other's in each other's bands, like that's, you know, that strikes me as a big ask. But and I'm curious, like it's a creative challenge, but it's also a fun creative opportunity. Could you just talk a little bit about your reactions to the idea and the experience so far?
Yeah, it's been really great. I play piano, so I'm playing keys on Ellie's set and a little bit on Sophia's set as well. And then Ellie's playing guitar on my set, and then Sophia's singing on both of our sets as well as playing guitar on her own set. And so it's great. Like, every night, bringing building and developing it, and it's starting. The songs are starting to take arrangements of their own, which is always really fun as musicians. So,
Yeah, it reminds me of the Nashville. So I think that in that case, I think we might have lost you for a second. Yeah, that it reminds me of like the Nashville Writers Round format. So we all kind of help each other out, and it allows for an audience to kind of stay for an entire set and discover 3 weeks of music. So I think when you're an emerging artist and touring is already difficult, we can adapt, and yeah, I don't think it's been difficult. It's been really fun.
Nice. Nice. This is so fun that you guys are on the road doing this. I love it. That's a great spontaneous element to all this. Um, Tom, I have a question for you. What's the when you're routing tours for emerging artists, or you're thinking about even, booking a few nights of emerging artists? What's the difference between a successful run and one that just like leaves everybody, the artists, the business side, everybody, hurt and unhappy? Like, what is there? Is it just butts and seats? Like, what has to happen to make this magic unlock?
Well, I mean, for this project, because this is different than anything we've ever done, as a venue owner myself, um, we try to believe in doing artist swaps or taking a chance on a emerging artist. Sometimes an agent or a manager will come to you and say, "Hey, will you take this chance? In exchange, you'll get this other bigger artist down the road." This project, in and of itself, like I said, is unlike anything I've ever been a part of. So I think, um, first of all, you have to realize that this is a long game. It's
Mm.
we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before. We You need time to work out the kinks, and you have to understand that success for this project isn't selling every single room out that you're going to. It's the success in it, to me at least, was getting. We earlier talked about the cost of doing things and the stipend and trying to offset it, but we didn't really talk about getting the buy-in from the venues themselves, like having those venues believe that we have a broken system right now, and that while we continue to work through that broken system, we still have I don't even like to use the word dream, a bigger vision of the future and what it can be if we work together to fix something that's broken. And it didn't get broken overnight, it got broken over a long period of time. So we have to be willing to invest in the amount of time it's going to take to fix it. So once again, this is a long game. I think getting the rooms to buy into it, getting them to understand that we're asking you to take a leap of faith, and that this first initial tour might not do tons of money, but it's going to make a difference. It's we are investing back into these young artists. We're trying to make it more feasible for these artists to grow in our smaller rooms. And I think at the end of the day, um, like I said, getting enough support out of that is success in and of itself in this mission, in this one night live. And then hopefully after we've done 6 or 10 of these, they become fully sustainable on their own, where the brand itself has a reputation, and you get people in these different local communities that when they see the name One Night Live, even if they don't know those emerging artists themselves, that hopefully come from different incubators or spaces, all over the country, they're going to buy a ticket because they understand the brand, and they understand that they're going to get to see somebody really special in this intimate setting that down the road at some point will be playing in those larger rooms that were birthed in these right spaces, in these communities with the right artists, and it's just a growth. So once again, it takes time, and it takes commitment and patience and understanding that we all want more and we want to do better.
Yeah, I related to that, Tom. I have a question from one of our viewers, Craig Snyder. He was asking about emerging artist nights. Various rooms around the country have those types of events. You know, maybe they're free, the artists are getting paid. As you were saying, like crowds come out because they know, oh, this is a new music night. Um, and they're spending money at the bar and they're going to check out new music. I'm curious, was there not like the need wasn't clearly the need wasn't being met. Those nights aren't doing enough. You needed more. What was missing? Like why not a sponsorship model here? What had to happen that wasn't happening?
Well, I mean, we do open mics and things similar to that in my own community, but that only grows the artist level in my backyard. What we want to
Hmm.
do is we want to help these artists travel and get out and grow their following in different neighboring states and regions, and then also connect them to those artists in those areas that they're going to. Um, Earlier we talked about the need for the artists themselves to learn the business. Um, I don't even find that cringeworthy anymore. I look at it like it's an absolute necessity. Yes, the art's important, but understanding how to brand yourself and market yourself more effectively, and then also manage yourself and maybe even take care of yourself because the margins are so thin is priceless to me. Like I don't think I would ever want to be an artist that didn't understand the business point of things at this in this day and age, because it's really necessary. And it doesn't mean you have to do it all by yourself, but you have to understand it so you're not being taken advantage of. and
Hmm.
and I think that we just live in a day and age where doing the few things that we've done before, or bands being willing to, open mics are great and stuff, but everybody, we need to figure out ways for everybody to also be able to live, and make money and continue to do their art. So um there's a lot going on. So I think that yeah.
I'd love
Yeah,
to add something to what Tom says, about
please.
emerging
Yeah.
artist nights. As he's pointed out, yeah, it can be hyper local. And that's great, to build your audience, a live audience in your hometown or even your home region is great. But, then what? These artists have great followings on social media, on Spotify, on channels. That's not in their hometown, right? Getting what next? For those who don't, I would say, win the lottery and get a support slot on a much bigger tour, what happens and how can they break out of that regional area? And we're looking at all of the different ways to do that because, they have fans in other places who would not be able to get to see them. So that's kind of a factor. And yeah, we absolutely support the emerging. In fact, the Live Music Society funds a lot of emerging nights in various local places, but often, yeah, they are local. So we're looking at different models, maybe like swaps, like a band that's huge in Cleveland and they've got a great following, but they've really never left the region. They're huge, they're big in the Midwest, they have a following. We pair those up with a band from Tennessee that has a great following there, and then we take them to the West Coast. That we allow them to go meet their fans and to build their career when they've gotten so far, and they're ready to expand.
Yeah. I want to be mindful of the fact that we may lose our artist guests at some point while they're on the road and they may need to move on with their day. And I have a question, Liza, I'm going to start with you, but I'd also like to bring the artists in on this. And this question is also informed by someone who asked via YouTube. First of all, you mentioned earlier about how the artists serving in each other's bands are important for the economic viability of the tour. And I'm wondering, without you don't have to go too deep on any specifics of the costs, but I'm curious, just how impactful is that? If you could talk a little bit about like the differences between everybody bringing a band and everybody serving as a band, what that means for the differences. And then maybe after you answer, I'd love to hear from the artists a little bit about their experiences prior to this tour. Did they have experiences as band members, or for lack of a better way to say it, as side people in other people's bands? And what's it like to put your sort of leadership and vision aside for even, a little bit of time every night, and sort of give yourself over to somebody else's vision for a little bit? Just curious to hear the artist's experience there as well. So I'll start with you, Liza.
Yeah, I mean, I think bring a band out with you, and we're not trying to put bands out of business, but instrumentalists, side men, side humans, we want them to come out when the artists are able to pay them the rate that they deserve. And at this level, with the amount of tickets that are being sold, the finances just don't work yet. So these artists are doing the work, building the audiences in each of these markets so that hopefully they can come back and bring their bands next time around. So that's definitely a huge asset to the way this tour was set up in terms of making it sustainable for artists. Solic is also helping with vehicle costs. I think because they're all one touring party, the artists are leveraging their relationships in each market. Oh, I have a third cousin over here that we can crash with, or oh, I have an old music instructor over here. So that's helping with the lodging costs as well, which makes it sustainable. But I love your question and the question from YouTube about what these artists do sort of when they're back home, and how do they make a living, and how does music come into that? Because I think that really speaks to fire in the belly and creating a lifestyle where if an opportunity arises where, hey, you can go on tour for 3 weeks, like how can they go leave their everyday life and just go do it? So I'd love for, yes, Sofia, maybe you could jump in and talk about what you do at home and how you sustain yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think that this is something that whenever I talk to like younger artists about as well, or just somebody earlier in their journey, I'm really passionate about. It's like your part-time gig can kind of make or break your career in my opinion. Because if you have the wrong gig where you don't have flexibility and you can't jump on opportunities, you do miss out on a lot of things. And so, I mean, I've always had like remote jobs or part-time jobs. I'm also a songwriter for other bigger artists, particularly in the Latin industry. So I kind of am able to have flexibility in that sense. And then back to your question about collaborating, and maybe Farayi also can jump in, but like, I really do I agree with the fire in the belly notion. I think that nowadays, if you have an issue with collaborating with somebody or supporting somebody and putting your ego down for 30 minutes, this is not the business for you. I think it's all about community. It's all about building relationships. So I think that's been part of, how amazing Salt Lake is, that I will say everybody on this tour has a exceptional personality and has made the entire process really, really easy. And I think if it wasn't for that, this could be pretty miserable. So I think we're all really happy. So honestly, I think taking a chance and collaborating, having, the ability to turn the star power off when it's not your set, like it's super important. I don't know, anything you would add?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that I think Salt Lake did a really great job of choosing artists that I think they thought would get along and gel, and like are humble and able to, serve the appropriate roles at the appropriate time during the set. And I live in Boston, and I've worked as a side person a lot in the jazz music industry, and then and I have my own band in Boston, so I know what it's like to be a band leader, and you get the check and you're paying everyone and you're figuring out all the transportation and sound, and it's it's a lot of work. And so it's nice sometimes, it's really nice sometimes to be a side person and to be able to take a back seat and to just share the space together. It's really nice. So
That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. Um, Tom, I have a little bit of a two-pronged question for you. I was going to ask it one way, but then I was just texted a question, so I'm gonna double dip on you here. Um, there's local support acts or opening acts throughout this tour, and my two questions are: one, what's important about that for this tour or just developmentally for the ecosystem? And my second question is, um, for artists or bands that are just starting out, um, do you ever have or can you offer any advice about how artists can get in the mix to be considered as openers when tours like this or even bigger tours come through town? Like how does that work for somebody?
Yeah, I think, when we first started talking about this concept, one thing that I tried to drill down was this has to be we versus me, and if we're trying to help developing artists, regardless of where they're coming from, we have to connect them intimately with the communities that they're going to. And the best way to do that is to, once again, about leveraging these relationships.
Yeah.
You got to leverage the artist relationships. Separately in this area, we have a company that I'm part of called uh, Florida Maverick Artist Management, and we do events and we do artist swapping around this region frequently. And we try to take our Tampa artists and get them to hopefully to Atlanta or other parts of Georgia or North or South Carolina, and hey, please take them, and when they can come, we'll take you, and building those relationships where these artists are meeting each other and getting on the road together and getting to know each other. And, we live in a society where, you can, we're trying to get people back on the road, but we can also utilize the good parts of technology and the connectivity that's out there. These artists should all know each other. If you're trying to get out there, there should be absolutely no reason in this day and age that you can't get to know other artists from all the different markets you want to go to. And that's like the 100,000-foot view of this national tour. But for the second part of your question, the same thing can be done locally. Like I tell bands all the time that'll hit me up locally that have never played my room, and I will tell them, go and look and see some of the other local bands that have paid the room, because you're going to have more success by trying to get in here off of the, you know, coattails or the legs or whatever, however you want to call it, of another band that's already got a relationship with me. Come to other nights, come to other local shows, network with those artists, come see the local bands that are playing in my room or other rooms, and then befriend them, ask them to pay it forward. It's that networking is where it's at. And it's got to happen on a local micro level. It's got to happen on a regional level, on a national level, and maybe even on an international level at some point if we keep having a big enough vision. But yeah, that's what it is. It's building those relationships, not just with the venue, but with the other artists in those communities and in other communities around the United States.
Mhm. Great. Thank you.
So sorry, we're gonna have to jump off because we're getting a little too close to our destination now, but thank you so much for having us.
Thank
You're
you
in
for joining
Atlanta
us.
tonight, right? Atlanta at the Altar Masquerade.
Yeah.
What are some of the venues that you're psyched to play? Some of the markets and venues you're psyched to play coming up on the tour before you jump?
I'm psyched. I mean, I'm definitely psyched for Nashville because I went there when I was like 20, and it will just be really fun to be back.
Yeah. I'm excited for Jackson.
Oh yeah,
I've never been to
that'll be
Mississippi.
amazing.
I haven't really been to most of these places, so I'm just excited in general to like be in this region and play in this new market. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for making time to do this.
Of course.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
We'll check
be
in with you
safe.
later.
Bye-bye. Kat, I'm curious. Actually, I'm going to ask this question, I think, to all three of you, but I would love it if you could ask from your if you could answer from your perspective or your organization's perspective. And that is, how are you going to evaluate whether this model in air quotes worked, or like what's the success criteria for Live Music Society?
we've batted that around a lot in planning this of like, okay, what are the measures of success? And I think there's initial measures. First of all, just doing something is successful. Making this happen and impacting these artists' lives in the way that I have no reservation about saying this is so impactful on their lives. That's success immediately for me. But yes, we want to build the number of tours. We want to build the number of rooms. We want to touch all of the great, amazing venues that we've gotten to know over the past few years. And we want to build the brand, as Tom said. We want to build the brand of One Night Live. As you know, like there's emo nights and different brands where people gather under one umbrella and they go, oh, that's cool. Let's go check that out. That's the goal. But in the meantime, success for us is engaging with the venues, making sure that they know that we're in their corner. I mean, it's tough. It's really tough to run a small venue. And a lot of people are like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'll give up. And just by existing, Live Music Society, you know, time and time again, people go like, man, you care about us? All right, I'm going to keep going for another year. And, you know, and you just gave me $5,000 to, you know, reset my stage or to get, you know, subwoofers or in some cases like portable air conditioning. And then we're like, okay, we can keep doing this. And that is another level of success, that they know that we're here to support them. You know, for this particular tour, I think one of the most successful things is getting the feedback. The feedback that we get from this first beta test is going to be, if we can get really good remarks of like, yeah, I liked it, but, or I really want to do this again, or I'd like to do this again, but you should think about XYZ, that's successful. We really want to understand from the venue's point of view, from the artist's point of view, you know, does it work? Should we start looking at other models or ways of doing this? So that will be success. But of course, ultimately, we want people to come to the gigs. We've been lucky so far. And the kickoff in Miami was absolutely fantastic at this great place called Gramps in Wynwood, the design district. And they've got a busy week. So success would be, you know, maybe the people who are listening to us speaking right now go to onenightlivetour.com and go buy a ticket for one of the gigs. There's 2 weeks left of the tour. And I'll repeat that, onenightlivetour.com. And yeah, get a ticket for Chicago, Atlanta, Greensboro, North Carolina, Pittsburgh. They've got we caught them on a long trip, but they have got a lot of gigs this week. They're in Atlanta tonight, then Greensboro, DC, Pittsburgh, Akron, Ohio, and Chicago. So yeah, we'd like to be able to say that, yeah, maybe they're emerging artists, maybe they will play to 10 people, which is part of the you know, the journey of many musicians. But if we can get some super like big shows together and have the venues say, yeah, this was great, can we do it again?
Yeah. There's some great towns too, some great music cities on that list, on the itinerary. Liza, I'm curious, you know, you basically represent the artist here, or the artist's perspective, both for your organization and in any conversations you had at the outset with the artists in terms of expectation setting. What's success look like, you know, from a artist development or just artist satisfaction point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first conversation we had was no one is getting rich in this model. I mean, literally no one, not the venues, not the artists, not the openers. So that can't be what we're out for here. I think number one, did you learn something? You know, this is the first tour for all three of these artists, even though in their own right, Sofia's flown all over the world to write for other artists, and Farayi has been nominated for Grammys on other people's projects. But in terms of like touring, this is their first tour for all three. So what did you learn? How could you optimize what you learned? How could you share that knowledge with your artist communities when you return back home? I think number two, relationship building, so important with the local artists, with the local venue operators, with the staff. with fans, of course. Could you make one super fan in each market who would then be, you know, your passion leader and your street teamer next time you come back to that market? Or who could invite you to crash on their couch? You know, one fan, I think, per market is impactful in and of itself. And then the third thing is, like, the pandemic is over. We were talking about COVID. You know, we're not all sitting on TikTok watching people sing in their bedrooms anymore. Like, I, as a fan, I want to know how the artists that I love or the artists that I'm discovering, how do they move through the world? How do they show themselves? What are they doing on their platform to elevate and highlight other people? So I think from a content perspective, showing these communities that they're coming into. I mean, Ellie just played Tom's venue, and she was like, "This is the best bathroom graffiti I've ever seen," and did a whole piece on it. And her fans are all commenting, and like the ability to connect and relate, and also highlight some of these local communities, I think is really important as well.
That's great. That's great. Tom, I'm gonna do it to you again. A question came in over YouTube that kind of modifies what I wanted to ask you. You know, I'm curious about how the venues and the local players that you're dealing with would view success. But I'm also curious, how are you getting feedback from them? Is it all anecdotal, or is there like some kind of, you know, quantitative feedback mechanism, a survey, or, you know, how are you communicating about the success, and how are you getting communicated with about the success from your constituents?
We definitely we all together put a survey together with additional help from other members of each of our organizations, and there is a survey that each venue gets with about 20 questions on it, basically asking them, there's a train coming, I don't know if you pick that up, but basically asking, you know, about the experience, what they thought worked, what they didn't work, if they put local support on it, if they, you know, how they used their stipend, how they marketed. There's just a number of questions on there. I think with this first one, you know, the goal was, let's begin, you know, let's get started. And in doing that, I think you don't want to put too many guardrails on things, because then we're not going to get a true answer of what worked and what didn't. So let's give these venues a little bit of freedom on how they're going to do things, and then we can look at the, you know, the information that comes back to us, and then we'll know, okay, well, this worked, this didn't work, or maybe this worked in this market, but it didn't work in this market over here. So I think, you know, again, you know, just throwing it at the wall a little bit on this first one, and seeing what sticks, I think was really, really important. And so the next level of success is how we take what came back and how we continue to evolve. Because again, I don't think any of us are looking at this like, you know, this is going to be perfect tomorrow or next week or even next year. You know, things take time to really develop. So having that evolution, helping it evolve, continuing to move forward, remembering why we're doing this. And then I think for me, at least, the final goal would be to have more people try new things, to look at what we're doing and go, you know what, that was an interesting concept. What if we tried to do that? Because I think I guess it sounds cliche, but I've talked about it a lot over the last 5 years. You know, I think being a part of the National Independent Venue Association and doing the Save Our Stages and getting that arts bill passed, I think there was many of us that sat there and thought, where do we go from here? You know, that's how Detour was formed in the first place. It was a handful of us saying, what if we tried to do this, and we could actually put these relationships into effect in a way that could actually help our venues and developing artists. Like, you know, just working together, finding like-minded independents that are for-profit, nonprofit, synergizing with the artists. You know, I want to see more of it. I want to see more of it across the board. And if what we do helps inspire other people to just not settle, I think we
Yeah.
talked a little bit at the beginning about um, everybody wants to talk about the problems. Where are the solutions? Let's get to work. Let's find the solutions so we can, take care of the arts because it's important. Um, Rooms like this, artists like this in those small rooms, that relationship, the community that goes along with it brings a lot of people joy, and especially in tough times. And so we have to protect it at all costs. So I encourage everyone just to start thinking boldly and to do the best they can. And to me, that would be the greatest thing that could come out of this is to help other people take a leap of faith too.
Amen. Amen. Kat, pursuant to that or along those same lines, um, something that has struck me from all three of your answers is that it sounds like there would have to be like a real, for lack of a better way to say it, like a disaster to not want to do this again. Like this was really about like let's just do it once, run the playbook, and then refine and there the you didn't have to get everything right the first time. Not everything was riding on this one tour. But I'm curious about if you could tell me a little bit of paint a little bit of a picture about scale. Like, okay, this goes well. We all sit down a month from now and say, "Wow, let's do it again." Um, you know, what does that look like? What's the next step? Are there other organizations you could pull in? Is it bigger rooms? Could you just paint a little bit of a picture of what a future for this might look like?
We don't have to wait for a month. We've already had those conversations. We like from the beginning, it was like before this tour even kicks off, let's be planning the next one, so that we can learn from it immediately. Yeah, we want to do tours this fall. We're already working on those. And it's interesting that you say, who should we connect with? Because this umbrella one night live, yeah, it means, one night you go to a venue and you see musicians live. And that's something that I believe, and probably everybody who follows Tone Arm and Spotlight On also believes is really special. But it could mean some other things, like if there is, music cities, music together, like other, youth or music organizations who only ever see each other on Zoom. Maybe they get to come one night live to connect with each other, the people in those spaces. So that's one of the things that we've been beginning to percolate a little bit of like, okay, yes, we want these artists that we're taking to different places to connect with the local artists. Well, what about if we connect with the local audiences and then maybe involve them some way in the performance? Tom did some version of that with the young artists and their families and community that he put on the show. And we want to do more of that kind of thing. We've learned that there are all kinds of like advocacy organizations in spaces. When we talk, everybody talks about community and bringing people together, but who are you bringing together? So we want to really be very intentional about, okay, let's reach out to specific organizations in different places. And sometimes that's happened through our grant programs. We've seen venues do that. Use the music night that we're funding to bring other organizations in to like, okay, you've never been to B-Side Lounge in Cleveland. Let's, come on in. Part of the money that we're raising tonight is going to go to your organization. So those are the things that we're kind of connecting with. Scaling, yeah, we have the capacity to do more of these. I'd like to find other funding organizations that are passionate about it. I would love to be able to take whole bands on tour. There's percolating, like little ideas around touring that are happening separately. There's a group of really great people that I know are thinking about artist accommodation. And just a shout out to I think it's called No Surf Cleveland, No Surf Cleveland, which is an artist house. It's a place where people who are coming through town can stay, and it's based on a sliding scale. Like those places need to exist everywhere. So there's all these different things happening in our community. We want to know who's doing what. We want them to know what we're doing. some of it can be under the umbrella of One Night Live. And it can be One Night Live. We have a panel discussion before the gig, or One Night Live. We have a local headliner who is going to do a training session, maybe with the artists who want to and talk about their history of touring. There's lots of different things and ways we could build this. So we're already planning the next one. We're not quite ready to announce it yet, but yeah, it's in the works. And yeah, I want to, there's hundreds and hundreds of artists. We're impacting 4 on this. That's the goal. More people, more impact, and more people on board to do things like this. That there's sometimes there's shock amongst the venue community. They're like, nobody is doing this, especially for a for-profit venue. But nobody understands that we operate like a non-profit, and the fact that there are beginning to be music support foundations, new ones coming up, who are clubbing together to do really great things. That's the thing. I'd like to leverage those relationships amongst funding organizations and maybe get a sponsor. Why not? And scale it that way. I'd like to be doing lots and lots and lots of these.
Yeah. Liza, tell me about the phone calls or the inbound you're getting, or what you'd love to see the inbound be from other artist development organizations or artist representatives. I'd have to imagine our peers and colleagues are watching this and keeping an eye on it. What kind of feedback are you getting, or would you be thrilled to get?
Yeah, it's some of the people that have reached out. It's been amazing. The Music District in Fort Collins, Colorado, and they're all about bolstering the local Fort Collins music scene, and they have incredible facilities. And now they invite national touring artists to come and use their facilities and stay and rehearse and record, but also have givebacks with the local community and do master classes and one-on-one coffee dates. And for our artists, they've just loved that experience and loved, sort of being, even though many of our artists are not at the point in their career that they'd like to be, they still have something to offer. And so being given the opportunity to offer back to that local community has been really impactful for them. So I'd love to see even more of that happening, especially along these tours. So that's been one organization. We've partnered with the Americana Music Association. They now have an amazing grant program that we're helping them out with, that help people get to Nashville for Americana Fest that normally wouldn't have access to it. So yeah, it's been nice to sort of spread the gospel about what we're doing and see what else we can cook up with other partner organizations. And like Kat said, more of it.
Yeah. Tom, from your perspective, and I know we're starting to approach the back 9 here, and our time together is winding down. I'm curious, what problem are you solving with this for venues? Is it about programming? Is it about making emergent talent affordable? I guess the question I have is, I would assume that a lot of your venue owners and the people you talk to, they got into this game because they love music and they want to highlight interesting artists. How would you articulate the problem statement that you're solving with this?
Well, I mean, once again, I think this is going to be a long process. And I think what we can do is, if we are strengthening the ability for small independent artists to get out and get more known and get more people in the room in front of them. When a lot of artists that I've talked to, that when they try to do something similar to this on their own, they might be playing in front of 5 people, and so the venues that are taking the chance, time in and time out, there's no growth to that process. It's just the same thing happening over and over again with these small artists trying to do it on their own, spinning their wheels, and most likely having the same outcome. By us stepping up and putting our intellect, our resources, our relationships behind it, hopefully there's going to be growth there and it becomes more successful, spotlights these independent artists on a larger level, and honestly gets the public paying closer attention. So on a micro level, if somehow not just us, but others like us, like I said, like hopefully more people start thinking in this way, can get it to the point where you could take a chance on an independent artist that's coming into your community or in your own community and trying to get their name out there. And we can put a spotlight on it where instead of, 5 or 15 or 20 people, now you're getting 70 or 80. It's going to help the venues in the long run because something's got to happen. And as those artists grow, you have greater numbers there too. So I just think that, and once again, it's a long-term vision. I think that anything we can do to support the artists, support them getting on the road, put a bigger spotlight on it, educating the public on the importance of these small rooms, getting numbers up, is going to help the venues eventually be more successful and help the artists be more successful.
Yeah, yeah. Kat, as the tour was approaching, and you've been up on the road, you've been up and running now for a few days. The artists, as we saw earlier, are out there. They seem pretty happy. There seems to be some camaraderie going. I'm curious, as opening night was approaching, what were you most excited about, and what were you most nervous about?
I was excited for them to be in Miami. I love Miami, and Gramps is such a fantastic place. I was also excited about the potential for this project, just adding to what Tom said, for an awareness, building awareness. A lot of the venues that we've connected with and built relationships with over the past few years are for-profit venues, right? And they tend to say, well, some of our customers think that we're kind of mercenary. They don't realize that we're very community oriented and we want to be part of the community. It's not about like just ticket sales and food and beverage sales. So, that piece of raising awareness of the point of view and the world view of the venue owners for people who might just think, oh, they're just running a business. They want to just get as much money from me as they possibly can. That's something that I'm quite excited about. What I was worried about, not much except like a completely empty room, which hasn't happened. I guess it still could. We've got another couple of weeks, but it's not happening. I'm concerned for their safety, and like making sure that we've got all of the pieces in place to make sure that they are traveling safely around the country. And for them and their mental well-being. This is something that people have raised awareness about it being tough to tour, to make sure that we are checking in with them. They look pretty happy on the road, but as things come up, they're going to face things, to make sure that they've got somebody they know is going to support them. And if something goes wrong, we've got their backs, just to know that they're riding that cushion, that if something falls apart, we've got you. And as well as I do, shit goes wrong. Shit goes wrong on tour. So, I'm holding my breath, keeping my fingers crossed, but we've yet to find out. But yeah, all fingers and toes crossed. No, I'm excited. I'm excited for this to be an experience. I'm excited for what we'll learn. I'm excited for these particular venues. The 14 venues that we've selected, they're really great. And they do wonderful things outside this. They're willing to take a chance on this project. We want to go back. We want to build more. We want to do lots and lots of this. So I'm excited about where we can go. And I just want to make sure these artists travel well and have a great experience, and the venues have a good experience too.
Yeah. Liza, can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, what's the support function, or what's the infrastructure for these artists? Is there a check-in? Is there like the hotline to somebody's desk that they can call if they get in trouble? Like, how do we keep them safe, and how do we keep them thriving?
Yeah. Well, we have it. Salt Lake has an amazing coordinator who's out on the road serving as tour manager, and then also happens to be an amazing bass player. So is also getting up on stage and playing bass. But Tom has been integral in helping our tour manager sort of like advance all these shows and understand the communication process and what works well for these venues. And also in terms of the routing, knowing, yeah, that the drives are going to be they're not going to be too brutal because Tom knows what it's about, and is just a professional doing this and helping to bring them through the process. But the Salt Lake team is out here. We've got 9 incredible interns and coordinators who are reaching out to influencers and local press and local radio and affinity organizations. We've got volunteer photographers at every single market taking beautiful photos that all of these artists and venues are able to use to promote. So trying to build as much of a safety net around them to make this successful as possible.
That's great. That's great. Uh, Tom, we're going to do the trifecta. This is the third question I have for you that's influenced by our YouTube audience.
All right.
What I was going to ask you was, because you keep referring to the long game, and
Yeah.
which I think is invaluable. I'm going to ask you another two-parter. If you're looking down the road, let's throw the stone and say it's 5 years from now. Um, what would you like to be looking back on and saying, this is what this collaboration did? And my second part of the question is, um, do you think, and this came from YouTube, do you think smaller venues have any concern that as the ambition for this grows, they get left behind? Because, as often happens in business, everybody wants to go bigger and more and to the next level. How do we make sure that these venues feel like they're part of the journey as this program expands and blossoms?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say thank you to the venues that did take part in this initial, what I like to call virgin voyage. There was a lot of unproven waters out there, obviously, and some of the venues that stepped up initially already had the buy-in in their brain, like they understood what was trying to happen. Others needed to, kind of be talked to about it and convinced that they should take a leap of faith. And so the ones that did take part with no real proven model yet to tell them, hey, this is going to work out all right, knowing that they might take somewhat of a hit on this, even with the stipend. I'd say thank you to those rooms. Tell me the first part of the question again.
It's 5 years from now. You're looking back over the course of this collaboration. What does it look like 5 years from now? Like, what do you want to see happen? What will make you feel good when you look back on it?
I think 5 years from now, what I would like to see is a healthier ecosystem for independent artists. I'd like to see more independent venues because right now I feel like we're at a dangerous point in society where rooms are closing faster than they're opening.
Mm.
I don't necessarily think that this model itself will help reverse that trend, but I think that once again, through doing things like this and spotlighting the need for change, other organizations hopefully will step up. Hopefully, um, whether it's NEVA working on legislative change on the local level and on the federal level, or Live Music Society being able to continue to give out grants, or incubators, helping strengthen the artists so they are more in control of their own art and ability to put more seats in the room. All these things together, I think, are where we need to go. So the legs of the chair that lift up the entire ecosystem of live are even and supportive, so that's where I'd like to see things in 5 years. And then what was the other part of it?
No, I think you got it, my
Is that the
friend.
whole
I think you
thing?
got it. Yeah, I
Okay.
think you got it.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that's a beautiful place for us to end. Thank you all so much, not only for your time today, but for this really interesting, innovative project. I know we were talking offline before we joined the public side of this, and it's so exciting to see something new being tried. This space is filled with a lot of hand wringing, rightfully so, on all sides, artists, consumers, promoters, venue owners. I mean, everybody's having lots of feelings about the live music space, but it's great to see an initiative, and I think just the fact that you got it up and running and had the idea and have taken it out to market, that's all that you could. That's just great success parameter for version one. So congratulations, thank you, and I'll look forward to talking to you on the next run.
Thanks, Ryan.
Indeed.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Thank
Pat,
you.
for bringing us all together and masterminding the entire thing. It's been a joy.
Cat. And thanks everybody who listened here and on YouTube. And it'll be archived on YouTube, and we'll get those links around for folks that couldn't make it today. This thing will have legs beyond just our afternoon together. All right. I'll see you all very soon, hopefully at a show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Be well.